Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It is that time of the month again where we get to do our reading wrap up. I had an awesome reading month in January. January just seems to fly by this year, which I'm really happy about because we all feel the same about winter here in Canada, and the sooner these months are through, the sooner we'll be back to summer. So January flew by, and then February is a short month, and then basically we're in the home stretch at that point. But yes, I had a really great reading month. I did end up reading 13 books this month, which is a lot for me. I usually do not read that many in a month, but I did branch out and read some new genres this month, and that's why, is because they were easier books to read. So we'll go through that as we go through. I did actually end up reading 7 out of the 9 books that I'd put on my monthly TBR. So round of applause for that, because I didn't think that I was going to read that many, and then I did. So if you haven't seen the last video that I posted, it was the TBR jar picks, my monthly read. So I picked 8 books off of that. So if I continue on this trend, I might actually make it through all those books. I was a little bit hesitant as I was picking them out, and there are some big books on there. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. But we'll wrap up at the end of February and see if I did make it through all of those. Let's dive in. I'm sure you guys are wondering, what did I actually read this month? I started off with Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is the second book in the Divine Rivals duology. It just came out at the end of December, and I loved Divine Rivals. It was like a 6-star read for me. So I was so excited to get my hands on this and get this read. And I'm so excited that this was the first book that I read this year because it was a 5-star read. It was just everything that I wanted it to be. I will say I didn't like it as much as I liked the first book, but it was going to be really hard to top that first book. So when I was thinking about a rating, I kind of took a step back and I thought, you know, I can't compare it to the first book because that was just something special. That was something so unique. So I can't compare the two. I can't compare the two, but this was definitely a 5-star read. It's a very easy fantasy world to understand. So I would definitely recommend this for any beginner fantasy reader, as well as more advanced fantasy readers as well. It picks up pretty soon after where the first book ended. So you kind of just follow right back into the story. This one you get a little bit more of a bit more of the fantasy, a bit more of kind of what's happening in the world and this war of the gods, and 5 stars. We started off really well this year. Oh, I love this book so much. And then I dove into Reckless by Elsie Silver. This is the 4th book in the Chestnut Springs series by her. I was doing so well at the beginning of the year. This was another 5-star read, guys. I thought that her books could not be topped after her second book, which was Hopeless? Heartless. Her second book was Heartless, and that was my favorite book in the series. And then I read Powerless, which is the 3rd, and I just didn't love it as much. So I thought maybe that the second book was just going to be my ultimate favorite. But this is definitely a contender of favorite book in the series so far. I thought this was so well done. I was really hesitant going into it because there is a secret baby trope, and I don't really love children in books very much. So I really thought that this wasn't going to be something that I love very much, but I ate it up. I thought it was so good. They had a little meet cute at the beginning. They're a little bit almost enemies to lovers in a way, as much as like romances can be. I know that's a whole different world than like fantasy enemies to lovers, but they do not like each other when they first meet. And then there is a little bit of miscommunication, but it didn't really bother me in this book because it wasn't really drawn out. It was for the first little bit of this book, and then we kind of get over that hump of the miscommunication and things kind of get resolved fairly quickly. So I was actually okay with how the miscommunication was. So if that's something that you've heard and puts you off, I would still say jump into this book. I would say jump into this whole world. This whole series is a 5-star series for me. I can't wait to read the final one, and it makes me so sad that it is going to be the last book in that series, but I know she's coming out with more, and I haven't read the series that came out before this. I think it's Gold Rush Ranch or something like that. It's along those lines. And it's another like small town horse romance. That's not the right way to say that. It's a romance. It's another romance series. Yeah, 5 stars. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. Would recommend. Please read this whole series. Start with the first one. Make your way through. You will have no regrets. Then I did finish the book club book that I had with me and my friends. So our schedules didn't really match for December. So this was our December pick. It's One Day in December by Josie Silver. So we just ended up meeting at the end of January to discuss this book instead, which was good because I didn't read the book until January. So this book, it is a romance. I thought it was going to be a lot more rom-com-y than what it actually is. It came off a little bit more like slice of life to me. You're following these two characters over 10-year span, and you're seeing them go through all these paths of they think they have love at first sight, and then they're friends, and then they're all in their different relationships and how they're navigating all of these things. I wanted to really like this book, but it wasn't my favorite. I was really bored through a lot of this. I think it could have been about this much shorter, and it could have just been this length, and that would have been totally fine. You do follow them over such a long period of time that I understand why so much is in it, but I do think that a lot of it could have been cut out, and it still would have been a pretty similar book, or even better at that point. I didn't like our main character, or our main male interest, Jack. I did not like him. I did not like him and Lori, our female main character, together. I didn't buy into their friendship. There is a bit of a cheating trope in this as well, which I didn't love. I think if this was not for my book club, I would have probably soft DNF'd this, if not hard DNF'd this, but I did push through because I wanted to be able to talk about it in the book club. Yeah, so that was unfortunate that I didn't love this, but I know that a lot of people do really like it, and I can understand why. If you are looking for a book that is a little bit more slice of lifey, just like maybe not a lot happening, but more of just following these people through their lives, you would probably enjoy this. I just needed a little bit more from it, and it wasn't giving me that like giddy vibe that I get with a lot of rom-coms that I really enjoy. So unfortunately, I gave it a 3-star, but I think it might be more around like a 2.5 for me. I feel bad giving anything lower than a 3-star, but it really, when I think about other books that I've given 3 stars, this really is not up to a 3-star standard for me. And I'm so sorry if you loved it, great, but I don't think I'd be recommending this book to anybody. The next book I did read on my Kindle, and that was Addicted to You by Becca and Krista Ritchie. This is the first book in the Addicted series, I think is just what it's called, which is a really extended series now. I know there's like the Calloway Sisters series as well. It's a lot of books. It's a big kind of universe to get into, but it's a lot of people's Holy Grail Roman Empire kind of a series. So I was excited to get in it, but I did know that the first one is not people's favorite. So I didn't have the bar set really high for the first book. It took me months to get through the first book. I just kept picking it up and reading a chapter here and there, but I did finally finish it in this month, and I did enjoy it. This was a solid 3-star read for me. It was very toxic. If you don't like toxic relationships, do not get into this book. It is centered around our two main characters, Lo and Lily, and then both battling their addictions, and they do kind of enable each other a little bit, and I do really like them. They're very flawed characters. They are, and I can see why people like this series, especially as it gets more developed. I think that these characters will probably feel like real people to me. So I'm looking forward to reading more. I don't know when I'm going to start picking up the next books, but it will be at some point down the road. 3 out of 5 stars for that one. And then another book that I don't have here is Bright Young Women by Rebecca Knoll? Who's that by? Jessica. Bright Young Woman by Jessica Knoll is the other book that I read, and that was our January book club pick. Now, this book, I have a lot of thoughts about this book. I think it's going to be a really good book to discuss at book club. So if you're looking for a book club book, definitely pick this one. It's very thought-provoking. So this book, a lot of its plot actually comes from real life events, and then it's a fiction spin on that. So you know that you're reading about some characters that actually were alive in this world at some point, and then it centers around a serial killer that unfortunately did unalive those characters. But it was very interesting because it was very victim oriented. You follow the victims of this crime that happened. You do see the serial killer at certain points later in the book, but they're never named. It's very not centered around him, which is very interesting because a lot of books and documentaries and things, like the serial killer is that main person. And a lot of serial killers do what they do because they want that attention, right? They love seeing themselves in the newspaper. So I really did enjoy how Jessica Knoll kind of took that narrative away from him and put it on the victims instead. Yeah, I did do myself a little bit of a disservice because I read the first half of it on audiobook and then I physically read the last half of it, but I know audiobooks for me, they never hit as hard. I think if I had have read this book completely cover to cover physically, I would have probably given it a 4, 4.5 even. But I landed on a 3-star because I just felt a little bit disjointed. There was parts, I think, of the plot that maybe I missed or I didn't understand when I was listening to it that then were important later down. So I think I did miss a lot of important things, not a lot of things, but I missed some of the important things earlier on in the book so I know a lot of my friends, they loved it. They loved this book and I wanted to love it. The writing was a little bit funny as well. Like actually when I was reading the book, it was a little challenging for me to follow, which is interesting because it wasn't a complex plot, but I did find my mind drifting away quite frequently. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this book. I think it's a very interesting read, a bit of an eye-opening read. A different read as well, but yeah, about 3 out of 5 stars for me on that one. Then I jumped into a classic, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I read the Mina Lima version of this, which I'd never read before. I'd read the series several times, but I'd never read this version, and this is a completely illustrated version. So it has illustrations and pop-ups and all of these things throughout it that just make for the reading experience to be totally different than what I've read from when I've read this book in the past. So I really enjoyed it. If you're a Harry Potter fan, I would recommend this version. Mina Lima, they were involved in the creation of the Harry Potter movies and doing a lot of the illustrations and visuals in those movies. So you see similar styles with some of the visuals in this and the illustrations in this as you do in the movies. But yeah, it's just so fun. Like you just get different pop-ups and things that are just, woo, things are falling out. Like this is Dumbledore's office and then kind of going up, and there's a lot of illustrations as well, and it is a non-abridged version. So it is your standard Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, but you're just getting these fun interactive parts as you go along. So this is a 5 out of 5 star for me. This whole series is a 5 out of 5 series. I grew up on these books and I can never give any of these books other than a 5 out of 5. Would very much recommend these versions as well. Then I jumped into a novella, which is The Worst Wingman Ever by Abby Jimenez. I can never think of names off the top of my head. Abby Jimenez. I love Abby Jimenez's writing. She's one of my favorite romance authors. I can binge her books so well. And she writes the type of rom-com that I love to read, where I am giggling, I am enjoying every part of what I'm reading, and the characters just feel really real to me. The Worst Wingman Ever, it's a novella in a series of novellas written by different authors. So I think they're all different, like meet cute type situations. So this book, it was only like 60 or 70 pages long, but the characters that she developed in this, they felt so real. And I kind of just wished that it was like a whole book. I was like, I already am invested in these characters' lives. I need more. So I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. That was just because it is a novella and it left me wanting more. Novellas, I basically never rate over 4 stars, no matter how good they are, because they don't give you enough substance. But I could very much see this being a beginning of a 5-star book if it were longer. So I would definitely recommend. I haven't read any of the other novellas in that kind of series, but they are free on Kindle Unlimited. So I would definitely recommend hers. I've heard good things about the Christina Lauren one as well. So maybe I'll check that out another time as well, because they're easy. You can sit there for an hour and read the whole novella. The next 4 books I read all in one day. If you haven't seen my reading vlog of these, go check it out. It was a lot of fun to do. This is the Heartstopper series. So we have volume 1 through 4. I'd never read a graphic novel before I read these, but I will probably be reading more. Maybe it was just my love for these ones, but this one, it centers around our 2 main characters, Charlie and Nick, as they develop a romance and kind of find themselves through this journey as well. The first 2 are very romance based and they were my favorite. They had me squealing. I cried at the end of the second book. It was just, they're so heartwarming. They're such lovely books. I didn't think that I would feel very connected to graphic novels and the characters in them because there's not a lot of words, but I felt like I was there. I felt like these characters are my friends and their friends are my friends. I would recommend these to anybody. They are young adult, and I don't always love young adult, but I loved these. They were excellent. And then the next two, volume 3 and volume 4, they were still centered around the romance, but they hit on some other topics as well: mental health, eating disorders, things of that sort. And them kind of managing these situations, it just felt very real life. These ones, they probably landed a bit more on the 4.25, 4.5 range for me, where I still really, really, really loved them, but they were a bit more hard hitting, and I just kind of missed the feeling from the first two books where I was just like devoured in their relationship. But I would still recommend these. I haven't read the 5th one yet. I'm on the wait list at the library, so hopefully I get that soon because I will read that right away for sure. I loved these. The last two books that I read in January, are you ready for this? Empire Storms and Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. I did the tandem read of these. As you can see, I have them all tabbed out. If you don't know what the tandem read is, basically, this is the 6th and 7th book in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. And they happen on the same timeline in different areas of the world with different characters. So when you tandem read, you're jumping back and forth between the two books in a very specific pattern. So basically you're reading one really giant book. So this felt like it took me a year to read. I think I was reading this pretty much through the whole month of January because they are both individually long books, and together they're about 1,400 pages, which is a lot of book. And I feel like a champion that I have read these two books this month. It was like a battle to get through in a good way. I don't mean that in a bad way. Empire of Storms, 5 out of 5. This is my favorite book in the series so far. I ate this up. It seemed like every chapter there was something new and exciting that was happening. The ending of this, I was sitting on my couch in like a full-blown sweat. I didn't know what was going to happen. It left on like a pretty big cliffhanger. So I'm going to have to pick up Kingdom of Ash pretty soon because I need to know what happens. But that book is also terrifying. So I'm going to have a little bit of a break before I jump into that one because that one's about 1,000 pages as well. Very long. And then Tower of Dawn, I gave 4 to 5 stars. I found the first, maybe third or even half of this book was pretty slow. You're in a new continent in this book, and it's centered around different characters than what you've mainly seen in the other books. So there was some world building to be done and and then also meeting these characters, understanding what's going on in this other world. And then once I got into this, I really got into it and I really, really did enjoy it. So I gave this one a 4 to 5 stars. I love Sarah J. Maas's writing. I eat it up. I adore really every book that she's written. If you're not in the Sarah J. Maas multiverse yet, please come join. I think the big question when it comes to these two books is to tandem read or not to tandem read. And I think as a whole, I would recommend tandem reading. I don't think you can go wrong either way. I know some people are very strong in their opinion of whether you need to tandem read or not. I think either is okay. So you would either tandem read them or read Empire Storms first and Tower of Dawn second. Just know if you read it that way, one book at a time, you are going to be left on a cliffhanger on Empire Storms, and then you're going to jump into Tower of Dawn and not understand what happens on that cliffhanger until you enter the next book, Kingdom of Ash. So that would be my only thing that really makes me hesitant. It is interesting because there is some crossover between these two books and kind of what is happening in these two books that you see pop up. So that was kind of fun to get those trinkets as you were tandem reading. But I don't think that they were like big enough plot points to warrant having to do the tandem read. And I think either way technically could kind of put you into a book slump. People also say that this one is so slow that it's hard to get through just by itself. But I also think that when you tandem read, it's just so much book that can totally slump you out as well. So I think you can do it either way. Just do what you think is right for your reading style. Okay, so that is the 13 books that I read in January. I can't believe I read 13 books this month. I think that's probably the most books that I've ever read in my life. 4 of those were graphic novels though, so I read those all in a day. So those definitely bulked up my numbers quite a bit. I have some awesome books picked out for February. Check out my February TBR video if you want to see what I'm reading this month. And I'm so happy that you get to join. And welcome to all my new subscribers that I have. I'm so glad that you're here. If you want to subscribe or like this video, if you haven't already, feel free to do that as well. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!